Well, now that we have heard about their childhoods, how about we hear them as adults now?
Well, I just started out saying that I moved to Cleveland and became a lawyer in Cleveland for 2 years as a labor lawyer, but neither of us liked Cleveland at all. So after 2 years, we got an opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. A friend of mine was with a law firm that needed another lawyer, and so he got me a job, and we went back to Washington. I never found out how much Mom hated Cleveland until she told me after we got back, she's kicking me, that a friend of hers asked her how she liked Cleveland. She said, well, let me tell you what my day was like. I'd wake up with a baby, take care of him, give him food. I'd cry for a couple of hours. Then I'd feed him again, and I'd cry for a while.
Not true. None of it is true.
So anyway, then we started living in Washington, which we loved. We still live there, and for those of you who are mathematically challenged, since this is 2009, Mom is 77 and I'm 75 at this point.
All right, is that the end? Well, I think the most important part we're missing so far, by the time we left Ithaca with 2 children, Mark was born in Washington, and then Jeff was born in Cleveland. So that was a good thing about Cleveland.
Tell them how long it took us to pay off his worth of debts.
Okay, I was just about to. We couldn't afford Jeff, unfortunately. So he was on loan for about 9 months, I think, something like that. We were paying for him by the month. And it was I think the total cost for him, the hospital and everything, was $300. And so we were paying off that $300.
We had paid a lot.
Little by little.
We paid off the last 9 months, $5 a month.
Yeah, but finally he was ours.
Now you own him outright.
No, we won't. But we did have a tough time because when we moved from Cleveland, actually we lived in a little place called Solon, and we couldn't sell our house. And so when we left, we were still carrying the mortgage on that little house, which I really don't even like to think about. It was so awful. Every day when I walked outside the house, I found a snake. It was in the middle of snake country. And yeah.
Right next to an abandoned quarry.
And there were rats too.
Right.
But anyway.
But mostly the snakes ate the rats.
So when we moved back, of course, we were still paying for the house and so on, and we were renting a house in Falls Church. And so, we didn't have much money, which is one reason we couldn't pay for Jeff, whom we called Buff, because that's how Mark pronounced Jeff. It's like your Bubby. So, but the most important thing was, that's when we started our family, and we did, all the things that young couples do when they're first having a family. That's great, and but Billy are pretty happy and enjoying the family life, although he traveled all the time, so it was mostly just me and the children. But we got along okay, except Mark was hyperactive, and Jeff tried to do everything Mark did, so they drove me crazy a lot.
So why did you travel all the time, Grandpa?
I started traveling 2 months after we moved back to Washington and went to Vietnam and spent a total of nearly 2 years in Vietnam over the course of 6 trips. That was allegedly before the war started, but we were working on an airfield, the only jet airfield in South Vietnam at the time. And then that started a lot of other work that I did, so I had jobs all over Asia during most of the 60s. I was in Indonesia, the Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Singapore, places like that. And then about 1970, quit going to the Far East so much, but in 1975 started going to the Middle East a great deal and worked all up and down the Gulf area, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Oman, UAE, so on and so forth, Kuwait, and while Mom was at home and she was about to have another baby.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, he was sitting around, I was doing the important job of having children and raising a family. And we had Jennifer, which was a delight, but just a thrill, really, because we had 2 boys, and even though they were marvelous and wonderful, and I knew and back then you didn't know what you were going to have, whether it was a boy or a girl. And of course, I really desperately wanted a girl after the 2 boys, but I would have been happy with whatever I got. But I was just ecstatic when Jennifer was born, and it was a girl. And I could barely believe it. When they told me that I had a girl, I said, "Are you sure?" And they were indeed, and I just was very blessed to have that daughter after two good sons. So anyway, I think,
Tell me how much left of her name.
well, it was kind of off the cuff, off the top of our heads. We had picked a couple of different names. We didn't think that she looked like that at all. I was initially going to name her, Sheila. I think because it was a book I read when I was a kid that I just loved. And the girl's name was Sheila. But anyway, then we thought, well, maybe Shelley. But when she was born, I said, she doesn't look like a Sheila or a Shelley. I said, I think she looks like a Jennifer. So that's what she is. And so I spent, while he was trekking around the world, doing big deal stuff, I was staying home and looking after the kids and doing
Doing
the
the more
church
important
work.
stuff.
Running the church. I spent probably 30 hours a week on church work while my kids were growing up. Very involved, which has been a real fortunate thing for me, because we built our lives around our church, and so that's where we got all our friends and our stable family life, I think. So
Very stable.
very stable.
And to conclude, I continue to work overseas. I've had cases in 35 different countries. I've worked extensively in 14 different countries, meaning staying there for many months at a time, and in 45 and 48 states. So the practice has been rather broad, but always away from home.
Which was a really good thing, right? Worked well for us, I think. If we're concluding,
We're not concluding yet.
Well, I guess, the details of our youth and growing up and everything kind of, I think, kind of pale in significance when you get to be our age and you look back and you kind of assess what you've done and where you've been and where you are, and think about how you feel about all that. And in my case, I feel extremely fortunate, very well satisfied with the life that I have led. I feel that I've been very blessed to have a wonderful family who are as close as can be. We all really care about each other, and I just now I've got the grandchildren that we have that we just love so much and find so rewarding. So I think it's probably fairly rare for a person to be able to look back and say, I'm satisfied, I'm content. My life was what I had hoped it would be, and more, much more, and I don't regret a bit of it. And so I can I can say without fear of contradiction, I've had a great life because of the people in it, especially my family.
Just to draw some distinctions of when we grew up and how we live now. I grew up on a farm, and their city was 20 miles away. I never saw a movie in a theater until I was 17 years old. And my mother made her own butter, made her own soap with lye and ashes. She did have one of the first refrigerators, electric refrigerators in the county. It was 4 feet high, which is about the size we now have in our boat. and everything was kept in there. We had, every fall, it was canning season. They put up our food in cans to use for the winter. We grew all of our own food. And today, of course, none of that is true. Our children and grandchildren hardly know where the food comes from. But it's very different.
Refrigerator.
And the real difference between
store.
when we grew up and now is the transportation and communication. The transportation, of course, now I've made trips around the world in less than a week when I was doing that a great deal. And communications, as we know, we sit here today at a computer and converse with anybody in any country instantaneously. Whereas when I first went to Vietnam, it took over a week for a letter to go back and forth from Vietnam to home. And even a cablegram took 72 hours to go back and forth. So the communication wasn't very good then, but it's excellent now.
Okay.
How about
So
you?
then we wonder, what will our children and grandchildren see in advances in their lives? Because we've seen things change. The home that I grew up on was the second house in Cayuga County, central New York State, to have electricity. My grandfather had gotten a little Delco electric generator, even smaller than the one we have on the boat now. And so we would have electricity. But in those days, you had one 20-watt light hung from the middle of the room. One bulb, 20-watt bulb, and that's all the light you got. You remember those days?
Yes, I certainly do.
I don't.
How much more time do we have?
2 minutes.
Okay, go, Mama.
Well, I think I kind of wrapped up with what I said, that, you know, it's been great. It's a great life. Not been a great life. It is a great
Yeah.
life. And
Thinking that.
I'm enjoying every bit of it, and anticipating more fun with my family, my grandchildren, and trips to Bethany. And
Get in there.
And as we say to all of our friends who say, have you lived in Washington all your life? And you say, not yet.
Well, you wouldn't have.
Goodbye, grandson.
goodbye.
Oh, goodbye. This isn't a goodbye video.
Goodbye.
Now you have to
Au
conclude.
revoir.
Yeah, well, can we tell a little bit about what we're doing in Bethany this week?
Well, we're going to Harpoon Pandas later tonight.
That's a good thing.
That's a really good thing.
And what have we been doing? What did we do last night, and what did we do?
Well, we've been going to the beach on the pools when they're not frigid or humps aren't broken.
And what have we been doing at
And,
dinner?
Yeah. Every single night at dinner so far, all 2 nights, we've watched Wings, the best show ever.
And last night after Baca went to bed, what
We
did we do?
played billboard.
With Mama.
That's a lot.
We laughed quite a bit, and he heard us too.
You have to mention, I mean, I'll even let this be known for posterity. He beat me at Scrabble.
It's 336 to 260,
And it probably never happen again, right?
I'm sure.
At least until tonight.
Thank you for inviting us into your home.